Welcome to Famous People, English Stories. Ready to level up your English? Here we learn through stories slow, clear, and fun. Listen, relax, and enjoy the journey.
Introduction. The house had grown too quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that wraps itself around your chest and makes it hard to breathe. It had been that way for months, ever since her daughter said she'd come visit. Chapter 1. The story behind the silence and waiting for the weekend that never came. I'll be there next weekend, Mama. Promise. Just like old times. Those were her words, spoken with the same warm voice that once whispered bedtime stories and teenage secrets. The mother had smiled through the phone, heart lifted by the thought of company, of family, of something to look forward to. She circled the date on the calendar in red. She didn't sleep much that week. She cleaned the whole house twice over, fluffed the couch cushions, washed the good tea set, even bought fresh flowers for the table. Then she baked the cake, her daughter's favorite, chocolate with raspberry filling, the way she liked it when she was 12. Every hour on the clock stretched longer as the weekend approached. Saturday morning arrived with sunlight and hope. She dressed early, in her soft blue sweater, the one her daughter once said made her look like the sky. She watched the driveway from the front window, eyes scanning for headlights that never appeared. Afternoon came. Then evening. Then the cake, once proud and sweet, sat untouched on the counter, slowly deflating into disappointment. She's probably tired. Tomorrow, she'll come tomorrow, the mother whispered to herself. Sunday was cloudy, and her hope faded with the light. By nightfall, she knew. No one was coming. She tried calling on Monday. No answer. She left a cheerful voicemail, pretending not to worry. Then another. And another. The next few weeks followed the same rhythm. Check the phone, no messages, rehearse a reason not to feel hurt. She began speaking to the silence as if it were a person. She's just busy. Young people have their lives. I shouldn't expect so much. But inside, she wondered. Had she done something wrong? Was it the argument from last Christmas? The disapproving look she gave when her daughter mentioned quitting her job? Regret clung to her like dust she couldn't wipe away. Still, she waited. Every weekend she cleaned the house, just in case. She made tea for two. And even though she stopped baking the cake, she never removed the red circle on the calendar. She left the porch light on at night. Not because she believed anymore, but because she didn't know how to turn it off. Chapter 2. A house that remembered everything. The house didn't speak, but it remembered. It remembered the footsteps of a child who once danced through the hallway in mismatched socks. It remembered late-night music leaking from a bedroom door, the quiet arguments in the kitchen, the whispered apologies, and the sound of two people laughing so hard they cried. Now, the house held its breath. Her daughter's room stayed untouched, though the dust had settled in like a guest overstaying its welcome. On the shelf stood a row of trophies, long since forgotten, and a photo frame with a fading picture of two smiling faces pressed close together, mother and daughter, arms around each other, in a summer that felt like it belonged to a different lifetime. The mother stood in the doorway often, one hand resting on the frame. She never stepped inside. It felt like trespassing on something sacred. Instead, she'd whisper to the silence, "You always left your shoes right there. I used to trip over them, remember?" Her voice cracked, not because of age but because of everything unspoken. Some nights, she'd sit by the window, cup of tea in hand, and watch the street. Her eyes weren't expecting headlights anymore. She just watched, the way you do when there's nothing left to do but wait. The house echoed with every creak of the wood, as if mourning with her. She remembered how her daughter used to paint in the sunroom, bright, messy splashes of color that somehow ended up on the floor, on her clothes, even in her hair. She remembered the angry years too, the slammed doors and sharp words. The way her daughter said, "You just don't understand me," and stormed out for the first time. And then the second. And then the time she didn't come back. The silence in the house wasn't just the absence of noise. It was heavy. It curled around her ankles, slowed her steps, and whispered in her ear when she tried to fall asleep. It asked questions she couldn't answer. What happened to us? Did I say too much? Did I not say enough? Sometimes, in moments of weakness, she replayed their last conversation. She remembered her daughter's voice, bright and busy, talking about new projects and apartment drama. She said she'd come next weekend. "Of course, Mama. You worry too much." Those were her last words. Now the walls carried those words like an echo trapped in time. The mother tried to fill her days. Laundry. Reading. Making soup she never finished. But the silence was always louder. And still, she didn't touch the room. She didn't move the sweater hanging off the chair. She didn't toss the old sketchbook with the broken spine. She didn't take down the glow-in-the-dark stars clinging to the ceiling. Because somewhere, in the quiet parts of her heart, she believed that if the house stayed the same, maybe, just maybe, her daughter would remember how to come home. Chapter 3: The Knock. It was a Thursday, one of those rainy ones that come without warning and make the whole world feel slow and heavy. The sky was the color of old wool, and water slid down the window panes like quiet tears. She was folding towels in the hallway, blue, yellow, white, soft things to keep her hands busy and her thoughts from slipping too far into the past. Then came the knock. Two soft, hesitant taps. She froze. The kind of stillness that makes even your heartbeat feel like a disruption. No one knocked on her door anymore. Not the neighbors, not the mailman, not anyone. She stared at the door for a full minute, unsure if she had imagined it. Then it came again, softer this time, like a question instead of a statement. She walked slowly to the door. Her heart was pounding, not with hope exactly, but with something older. Fear. Longing. A cautious ache. When she opened the door, her breath caught. It was her daughter. Older, thinner, soaked from the rain. Her dark hair was plastered to her cheeks, her coat clung to her, and her eyes, those familiar eyes, were full of something she couldn't quite name. Pain, maybe. Regret. Or simply the weight of time. Neither of them said a word. The silence between them was louder than the rain. The mother's hand gripped the edge of the door. Her knees trembled. She had imagined this moment so many times, in dreams and daydreams and quiet corners of hope, but in none of those versions had it felt like this, so real, so raw, so fragile. Then her daughter opened her mouth. Her voice was barely audible. "Hi, Mama." Just 2 words. But they split the silence wide open. The mother stepped aside. No dramatic hug. No tears yet. Just a space, a welcome, an invitation to step inside the house that had waited just as long as she had. Her daughter walked in slowly, like someone entering a museum of her own life. Her eyes darted to the photos on the wall, the small ceramic cat on the windowsill, the framed drawing she made in 4th grade still hanging crookedly by the stairs. Nothing had changed. Everything had changed. The door closed gently behind them. The rain pattered on the roof. For a long moment they stood in the living room, facing each other, not knowing what to do with their hands, their voices, their shared history. Her daughter looked down. "I didn't know how to come back," she said. "I waited too long. I thought, maybe you wouldn't want me anymore." The mother's breath shuddered. She stepped forward and took her daughter's hand, cold and wet and shaking. "You're here now," she said. That was all. Sometimes the heart doesn't need explanations. Just presence. Just a hand in the dark. Just a knock at the door. Chapter 4. Coming back is harder than leaving. They sat at the kitchen table like 2 travelers who had taken different roads and arrived at the same place without knowing if they were still welcome. The air between them was thick, not with anger, but with history. The kind that lives in gestures left unfinished, in words too long unsaid. Her daughter's hair was still damp, and she looked down at her hands, twisting the fabric of her sleeve like a child again. The mother had laid out a towel and offered her dry socks without a word. She didn't ask where she had been. She didn't ask why she hadn't called. She made tea. The kettle whistled softly as she poured the water into 2 mismatched cups. The same ones they used to use when they sat here years ago, talking about school and books and crushes and dreams. Time had stained them slightly, but they still held warmth. Her daughter took the cup with both hands. "I thought of you every day," she said quietly. But the more time passed, the harder it got to come back. I'd pick up the phone and then put it down. I'd tell myself I'd call tomorrow. And then another week would go by. And then a month. The mother didn't respond right away. She let the steam rise between them. Let the confession settle into the walls. "I wasn't angry," the mother finally said. "Just hurt. I didn't know if you were okay. I kept thinking I must have done something. That I said too much. Or not enough." Her daughter shook her head. "It wasn't you. It was me. I didn't know how to face you after all this time. I thought I had to have everything figured out before I came back. And I didn't. I still don't." "You didn't need to figure it all out," her mother said. "You just needed to come home." There was silence again, but this time it felt different. Not empty, just full of something new. Something growing. Her daughter looked up, her eyes glassy. "I thought if I stayed away long enough, you'd stop waiting. The mother reached across the table, her hand trembling only slightly as it covered her daughter's. I never stopped. They sat like that for a while. The kitchen smelled of chamomile and rain. Outside, the storm was beginning to fade. Inside, something else was beginning to mend. No dramatic apologies. No rehearsed speeches. Just tea. And honesty. And the quiet work of rebuilding trust, one word at a time. The mother got up and opened the fridge. "There's no cake," she said with a soft smile. "I stopped baking it after the second time you didn't come." "I remember," her daughter replied, eyes down. "But I can make one now," the mother added, her voice steady. This time, her daughter didn't say she was too tired. She simply nodded. "Let me help." Chapter 5. The door is still open. The house felt warmer that night, not from the oven or the lights, but from something less visible. Something quiet. Her daughter had stayed. She hadn't made a dramatic declaration, hadn't said she was back for good. But she hadn't rushed to leave either. She had helped wash the dishes, wiped the counter clean, and even asked where the spare blankets were. It was a simple question, but one that made the mother's chest tighten with something close to relief. Upstairs, her daughter opened the door to her old room slowly, like unsealing a memory. Nothing had changed. The pink sweater still hung on the chair. The bookshelf still held the same dog-eared novels, the ones she used to read out loud while lying on the floor. And above the bed, the glow-in-the-dark stars still clung stubbornly to the ceiling, faded now but still shining when the lights were off. She smiled at the sight of them. She didn't take them down. The mother passed the doorway once, later that evening, and saw the light under the door. It was the smallest thing, but it brought her more peace than 1,000 words ever could. Downstairs, she turned off the porch light for the first time in months. Morning came slowly. The smell of coffee drifted through the house, and for the first time in what felt like years, 2 mugs sat on the table. Her daughter appeared, hair tangled, eyes still puffy with sleep. She looked like she had when she was a teenager, groggy and quiet, except now the silence wasn't distant. It was gentle. They didn't speak much. Just the kind of silence that comes when words aren't needed. The clink of a spoon. The low hum of the kettle. The crunch of toast. These were the new sounds of healing. Later, her daughter said she'd like to go for a walk just around the neighborhood. "I want to see if the old bookstore is still there," she said, as if she had never left. The mother nodded. "I'll get my coat." And that was it. No declarations. No timeline. Just a slow walk and a shared direction. Later that day, her daughter sat on the floor of her room, flipping through an old sketchbook. She laughed softly at a badly drawn portrait of the family cat, one ear too big. The mother stood in the doorway, watching quietly, not wanting to interrupt the moment. Her daughter looked up. "I forgot how much this house remembers," she said. "It never stopped," her mother replied. That evening, the red circle on the calendar was still there, faint but visible. The mother looked at it for a long time. Then, without sadness, she uncircled it. She picked up a pen and drew a new one. A small circle. A quiet promise. Tomorrow. Because now, tomorrow was something to look forward to. And the door, like the heart, was still open. If this story moved you, take a moment today to reach out to someone you haven't spoken to in a while. Sometimes, all it takes is a simple message, a call, or even a knock on the door to begin healing. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder that it's never too late to come home or to leave the light on. And if you've ever waited in silence or struggled to return, you're not alone. Leave a comment, share your story, or simply say I'm still here. Because sometimes, the first step back is just letting someone know the door is still open.